Heavenly Creatures was my favorite film the year it came out, and in fact it became one of those benchmark things that if you're talking with people and you want to judge their tastes, you know, say, oh, by the way, did you see Heavenly Creatures? And if they said, oh yeah, I saw it, I thought it was terrible, I'd know that they had no taste and there was no point in talking any further with them. Because if we thought it all alike, they'd go, oh, yes, fantastic film. I just loved that film. It was great. And I kind of told my agent, I think, that whoever this guy is, I don't know who he is, but whoever he is, I'd love to work with him on anything, any day. And it was one of those situations where I got a call asking if I was interested in working with Peter Jackson on his next film. They told me a little bit about it, and I said, I don't even care what it is. You know, it's like, yes, the answer is yes.
I was really delighted that Danny Elfman wanted to do the music for the film, because I think more than just about any composer you could name, he has a real affinity for the tone of our movie. I mean, if there's one guy that understands this delicate balance between comedy and horror, it's got to be Danny.
When I first saw the first cut of Frighteners, which was at the Peter and Fran's house in New Zealand, and it was pretty wild because I flew out there from Los Angeles for 17 hours on the ground and flew back basically to see the movie. So I got there and I was really kind of a little floaty, but it was really fun. I went to their house and I met them and I just adored them both. And they showed me the movie on video. And I realized right there when I saw it that I had my work cut out for me, that it was going to be a difficult, time-intensive film. But I was also very excited because I like challenges, and I knew that it just was not going to be an easy, you know, oh, I just could whip through this kind of score, that it meant really kind of nailing it and changing the directions a lot and shifting from one tone to another and trying to make it clearer for the audience what type of a movie it is that they're getting into right at the top.
I wanted to make sure that the music tied the film together tonally, that the music acknowledged the film for what it was, and that it help the audience go along for the ride.
What film music does is consciously or unconsciously lead the audience down the path you want them to be led. And in every movie, and within every movie, that's completely different. Sometimes the problem is you really want them to know that it's okay to laugh at something. Or sometimes you specifically don't want them to. Or sometimes you want to mislead them. In other words, the music you could be watching a woman washing the dishes in her kitchen and whistling or kind of humming along to herself, and nothing particular is happening, but the music can tell you that A, something horrible is about to happen to her, or give us the impression that nothing horrible is about to happen, that this is a very, very normal moment to take us off guard for something horrible that does happen all of a sudden. So we have quite a bit of ability. Or it can tell us that there's something really crazy going on in her head, that she's thinking of something tied to another piece of music that we've heard earlier in the story, that even though we just see her washing the dishes, she's thinking of somebody or something. So it has this strange ability to lead us down many paths while watching the same bit of footage. It can make a violent scene more violent, it can make a funny scene funnier, or what's very important in a movie with a very difficult or odd tone, it could let one know, you know, in The Frighteners, this was the case in the beginning of the movie. People aren't quite sure what type of movie they're getting into. In the movie To Die For, it was certainly the case in many of Tim Burton's movies, where you're trying to simply let the audience know what type of movie are they getting into.
Thank you, Bannister. You can go. What the hell are you staring at? What's with the number?
What number?
Look, if you're trying to freak me out, it's not gonna work, okay? You know what he's trying to do? He's trying to get more money out of us, is what he's trying to do. Get your shit. Get the hell out of my house. Come on. Move.
Ray, just...
I always hope that something I work on isn't going to sound just like something else, but there are genres, and it's impossible to avoid. Obviously, a dark comedy like The Frighteners, I can't totally 100% get away from other dark comedies, let's say of Tim Burton, that I've done, where there's going to be some crossover, but whether it be Beetlejuice or Nightmare Before Christmas or Darkman or Nightbreed, there's going to be some amount of crossover, but I always go, well, that's okay. I am the same composer. When I grew up, I used to listen to Bernard Herrmann's scores, and I would be able to tell that it was the same composer in all the science fiction films in the 60s of his that I grew up on. So on the one hand, I don't want them to sound too similar. On the other hand, I can't make them sound like they're all completely from separate people, because I don't have more than 2 or 3 people living inside here. So, I wish I had 10, but I don't. I only have 2 or 3 that have to get along, and they usually divide up the work depending on what type of film it is and what type of score it's going to be.
Fran and I were in Los Angeles for some of the post-production of The Frighteners, and we went round to Danny's house and basically sat down and watched the entire movie with him and figured out where the bits of music should go and what type of music it should be.
You have a thing called a spotting session with the director very early on in the process, and you go scene by scene, and the director will go, I think there should be music here, maybe starting with this, and going through here and playing this element, and let's make it emotional or big or funny or small, or, You talk about what you're playing in the scene or what you're not playing in the scene. And then occasionally I'll go, oh, maybe there shouldn't be music here, or maybe there should be some here, and the director will go, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. You just kind of talk it through, and you explain to each other why there should or shouldn't be music in your opinions.
For some reason, I don't know why, we ended up with a lot of music in The Frighteners, particularly a lot of starts, they call it, which are just the individual cues. I guess it's something to do with the pace or the momentum of the film.
I make up this huge board, and on this board is all the names of all the cues with a box next to it. And then there's the dates on the top and the number of days left to the scoring date. And it becomes like a countdown. And so here's the cue, how long the cue is, in a box that I'll check off as I finish them. And here's the number of days. So at the end of each night, I check off another square, and I count 27 days left. And then I'll go, okay, I've done this much music, and these are the empty boxes, there's this much left. And I'll either go, oh my God, I'm totally off schedule. Or I'll go, okay, I'm barely on it. If I skip one day, I'm screwed. But if I stay on this pace, I'll make it. And it's just a way to pace myself and to have the confidence that I'm going to finish on time. Or do I have to stay up all night, or do I have to adjust to it? So she delivered the board the first day with all the cues, and I just said, shit, I've never seen one like that. This is like 50 starts, and there was no particular reason. It was just, that's just the way it was,
One of the most exciting things, I think, on The Frighteners was the recording of the music, which we did at the Sony recording stage, and I think it was like the actual stage that was used for Ben-Hur and, I don't know, The Wizard of Oz, I think somebody said, back in the 30s, and so it had this history and this atmosphere, and we had a really big orchestra, I don't know, 110-piece orchestra, and that was really a lot of fun, and it was about 5 or 6 days worth of work, and I just found it incredibly entertaining. It's like, your own private sort of concert, I guess.
Y tus trailers, visita mi canal.
We then took the finished music recordings back to New Zealand because the final mixing and dubbing of the film actually happened down here in New Zealand. And I remember Danny was really generous because the last thing he said to me before I left with like all these tapes of his music was, you know, when you're mixing, don't worry if you want to drop any of the music, because I think he's very, very aware that a film can be too full on in terms of the music. It can be too intense. The reality in the end was that only one of Danny's music tracks was actually dropped in the final mix. It's the scene where Lucy finds a knife in old lady Bradley's closet. You know, it was one of those situations where we tried the scene with music and we tried it without, and keeping in mind what had just gone before and what was about to happen in the film, we just thought it was possibly going to be more effective without any music at all.
Mother, coffee's ready.
It would be fun now, just for the completists in the audience of this Laserdisc, just to play that cue where the music, you know, is not heard in the finished movie. We could play it here and have a listen to that track.
I'll make you some coffee, Mother. Mother, coffee's ready.
Lucy, go!
I don't think there should ever be a conflict between sound effects and music, because the two have different things to offer the film. I always find that music connects directly with your emotions, with the emotions of the viewer. It helps to accompany you on this journey through the film and to suggest things that you should be feeling and to help enhance that. I find that sound effects, to me, have an emotional connection as well, but it's like one step removed from the music.
I look at the scene and I just go, this music will work for this scene. What else they put in it, I have no control over. And I just kind of hope it all works itself out. But, you know, as I say, at the same time I'm working on a scene and devising this music that I think, to me, makes the scene come alive, there's a whole other team simultaneously working on many tracks of sound effects that, to them, is making the scene come alive. So for me it works best with just music, for them it'll work best with just sound effects, and both of us have to live with the fact that they're all going to get put together, and scene by scene, moment to moment, one will survive and the other will, you know, not survive to various degrees. And you just hope that there's a good set of ears balancing it all out at the end. But that's kind of the way it works. There really isn't the time on most films to really let one finish and then the other one start, or vice versa. We're all, you know, the way movies are, it's everybody's like jamming at the end there. We're working really hard and just trying to make our deadlines, and that's the reality of movie making.
The tunnel of light scene is a good example where music and effects were deliberately designed to work together. We were very lucky in having Randy Tom do the sound design for us on The Frighteners. And he came up with the idea of keeping the tunnel down at the lower end of the spectrum, the bass rumbles, the vibrations of the power of the tunnel, and the cracking open of like the fabric of the atmosphere. With that in mind, Danny designed the music to be at the higher end, so it was the strings and the choir and so you have separation between the two. The two are not muddying each other up. I think that's a very good example of how, with a little bit of thought beforehand, the music and effects can work very well together.
There was an effect, for example, that I was played for the sound of the Grim Reaper. But, you know, when you're working with an orchestra, there's not much you can do. You know, the orchestra takes up a certain range, and it's hard to kind of play around effects. If you know that it's going to be really a low effect, you know, you might try to avoid low instruments or something, or if you know it's going to be very high effect. But very often we just have to plow ahead, do the best job we can, and just hope that in the dub at the end that it all gets sorted out.
Something that would be quite fun to do, I think, and it kind of, you know, might illustrate some of the stuff we've just been talking about, is if we played a scene in a movie with just the sound effects, and then we played it again with just the music. Because it's kind of an interesting comparison, you know, and it sort of, I guess, illustrates the difficulty of trying to make everything work and everything balance. And a good scene to use is the opening scene where there's a thunderstorm and there's the wallpaper man and the stuff crashing in the kitchen, and there's a hell of a lot of noise, which you need. I mean, it looks dumb if you don't have any, if something falls and you don't hear it. It just doesn't seem right. So you've got to have the sound effects, and they've got to be working really well. And at the same time, it's the opening of the film, and we wanted a big, grand, operatic feel to the music.
Why us? I mean, why are they in our house?
Why us? Why us? I hear it all the time, Mrs. Lindsay. I tell you, usually emanations are confined to the cemetery. Usually emanations are confined to the cemetery, but they do escape. I see them on this. It's usually your young ones. I see them on the street, in people's gardens. Yeah, in people's gardens. I see them at Farley's Thrifty Mart.
Farley's?
I mean, Granger.
Farley's?
Farley Granger. I see him at Granger's 50 Mart.
Granger's?
Yeah. Yeah, Saturday night you see him huddled around the pet food department. I can't figure him out.
Frank, you should disarm. Hairball. Oh, come on now, Lucy. I don't know why you keep shutting me out. I mean, I still have a lot to offer.
Keep rolling, no rolling. You know nothing of my situation. We got a lot of gutless, we got a lot of shit. Low lives.
All right, back. Wasn't funny. Fuck me. Sorry.
I think one of the funniest bloopers that that happened in The Frighteners, and it happened a couple of times, was when Michael forgot what film he was in.
We were doing this scene with the judge, and I was supposed to call out to him, and I just kept saying Doc from Back to the Future. It was like some weird out-of-body thing.
Little crook in the Pony Express, huh, Doc? Whoa! I called him Doc. It's fucking Back to the Future.
I just go, Doc, I'm Judge. Shit.
Hey, boys! Rebound!
Doc! Doc, I did it again.
I know, it's the way I look. It's this damn ectoplasm stuff. It turns you off, doesn't it? Oh, come on, Lucy, you're not listening to me! Oh, look, baby, you know we have a great relationship. It's just that lately, I don't feel that you've been giving it 100%. I guess a blowjob's out of the question.
And you roll. Sit. And action.
Here's Johnny. I had to just do one. Sorry.
Yeah, all right?
Hi. Now I'm acting.
And sit. Action.
En bärnstöd bestämmer till.
And action.
Frank, Listen to me. I found your knife. It was hidden in old Lady Bradley's... Oh, I'm sorry.
I had to get hit by this skeleton. The special effects guys had this skeleton, and they were on top of it. They padded the skeleton so that when it hit me, it wouldn't hurt me. But they padded it like too low or something. So when this thing came, it was like being hit in the head with a baseball bat.
Captain! Stuart can't take much more of this! I think he's gonna blow!
I did it! I did it! I ain't shooting. I forgot my line of all things. Sorry.
Hey! Hey, partner! Hope you're having fun in it. Look, oh, man, one more.
Here we go, keep rolling.
Kiss.
All right, kid, quit jumping around and acting like a baby. This is serious.
You should go and stand over there, Charlie. Quick, jump over there with Marty. That's fine. Go, Charlie.
Who's this? Who's this?
Up high, Marty, up high.
Dish. It's a big smile. Dish.
And let him bounce. That's good.
Dish.
Jump, start to jump, buddy, start to jump. Jump.
See, you've been watching too many Shaft movies, that's it. I'm talking to... Oh, fuck, God. I hate that. I'm sorry.
I remember the close-ups on the mouth and the eyes.
Peter, to do that scene, he wanted to get all these different perspectives of Dammers and you know, like close-ups of the eyes and close-ups of the mouth and strange points of view and handheld, shaky, bizarre, disconcerting stuff. But he'd do these setups, and like he did a real tight setup of Jeffrey's mouth, and it was so ridiculously funny that Peter kept laughing and wrecking the takes.
Well, I started to giggle, and I've never told anybody why I started to giggle. The reason was I was watching the close-up of the mouth on the monitor, and I suddenly became aware of a little dribble of saliva that was forming on Jeff's lower lip. And I suddenly wasn't listening to the dialogue anymore. I was just watching the progress of this little drip of saliva as it made its way down from his lip to his chin, and I was sort of started to wonder whether Jeff had noticed it was there or if he could feel it and was just going, and I was starting to suppress a giggle. I could feel it coming, and then I think it got worse because he suddenly wiped it away with his finger, and from that point on I was just fighting, trying not to laugh, but I couldn't make it to the end of the take. I'm sorry.
Why are you shaking?
Michael Fox turned to me at one point and said, "You know, I've never been on a set where the director's giggling has made the actors crack up before."
And so then he got it under control, and then Michael went off, and so I lost it on that. So he had to take a walk, and I could even hear him like way over on the other side of the soundstage, sort of muffling a laugh.
But what about the guy in the toilet?
It wasn't me that time.
I know.
Keep rolling. Here we go. And action.
We know you didn't like her.
So we finally got the mouth shot, but things didn't get any better because we moved on to the eyes, and I was in this totally vaporous kind of mood, and I suddenly started to notice as we were filming that Jeff's eyes were moving up and down in sync with his voice, so they were acting like little mouths.
28 cases involved crushed hearts, arteries choked until they burst. Those started in 1990 with your beautiful wife, Deborah.
So I'm watching these little eyes going like mouths, and I'm trying to suppress a giggle. I mean, Jeff is trying to not to laugh as well. I can see that, and that's making me laugh even harder. And so, again, that one ended in disaster.
Why are you shaking? You're doing it now.
You're looking a little pale. There's a gas station. You gotta take a leak, I do. Judge, just rest your bones.
Just after well, if you could.
Hello, Billy. Billy. Who's gorgeous? Who's a beautiful boy? Yes. Who's a lovely boy? Billy. Hi. Smile.
Doesn't have a steam here.
Up and down, Billy. Billy.
Can we respray?
In most of the films that I've made, we've generally had one day during the shoot, which is kind of like the silly day. On Heavenly Creatures, it was when all the crew dressed up in drag, like the men dressed up as women and the women dressed up as men, and it was kind of fun, and we've got some good footage of that for the Heavenly Creatures laserdisc. The Frighteners, it happened on a day where we were shooting a serious scene where Johnny Bartlett's being taken to court and the massacre has happened in this hospital. It's a black and white flashback to the 60s, and we wanted quite a few extras to play policemen and journalists and cameramen, and we used the crew. So it's always funny for us to watch it because we're actually looking at a lot of the crew, you know, wearing the wardrobe and the costume and the makeup in there, and they're actually quite good actors.
Give me a blanket, someone!
Can we just get back that way?
Come in. Any comments, Johnny?
I got me a score of 12. That's one more than Starkweather.
I guess that makes me public enemy number one. Wait, back. FBI guys, fighting hostage.
Get these people away! Get these people away!
Information. Can you tell us anything whatsoever? Anything that can
Take these people back.
Oh, for heaven's sake, we're reporters, for God's sakes. We're supposed to get the news.
Into the car, guys. Bottom of the car. Bottom of the car. FBI guys, back in the car.
I think one of the biggest causes of frustration in the whole movie for Dee Wallace-Stone was the pump-action shotgun that she had to use.
Well, let's start with Dee doesn't like guns, okay? And every role I get, I have to use a bloody gun. I don't know what that's about. But I don't like guns, and this was a big gun. And they put some really loud rounds in it. And I had about 30 minutes to work with the darn thing before I used it, right? And you know, you get into these scenes, Laurent, you have to go to La La Land to go from who I am to who Patricia was in this scene. It's like, ugh. So I'm in, I'm doing this, and I turn around and it goes, I think there were a few four-letter words flying around at that moment, and we tried it 2 or 3 ways, and you had to really pull the whole thing out for it to work, you know. But I would get into the momentum of the scene, and I would want to do it so fast and so professionally, you know, that I would never throw it quite as far as I had to. So by the time we really got it, I was Patricia. I was so pissed off at this gun.
Sound off like you...
Will you get a load of this? He set us up, Lucy. The man set us up. This is our house. I'm sorry. Shit.
Oh, shit.
You okay?
Yeah.
No, no, ho. Lucy!
I don't know what's going on. Why did the elevator stop? Lucy had like one costume throughout the movie. So it felt, because that pink jacket, I wore it pretty much for the whole 7 months. And so after a while, the crew was like, "Oh, is that a new sweater? Oh, you look good today," you know.
And it became a bit of a joke amongst the crew that, you know, she'd turn up for work and she'd have to just wear the same clothes every single day for like 4 months at a time. And on the very last day that she was working on the film, the costume department presented her with a present, which was this little Barbie doll, and they'd made a costume, a perfect miniature costume of this pink jacket, and they dressed the Barbie doll up. And I was lining up her last shot in the movie, which was just a close-up of her in the back of the cop car, and so I, you know, was looking at Trini, and she had to duck out of the frame and then come up into the frame. So we got ready to shoot it, and I called action.
Set.
Ray, honey, I need to know where you invested my money. That $16,000 that I had saved. The attorneys can't find it anywhere.
Oh, no shit! And I blew it on a bad investment. But don't tell her that. Tell her everything's gonna be fuck my line. God damn it! Got some stuff.
Fuck! I looked at the wrong place. I'm sorry.
In New Zealand, we have an ice cream company called Mr. Whippy who drive around in little vans, and they sell ice creams on the side of the road. And they play a tune called Green Sleeves, which was actually composed by Henry VIII, for those of you that need to know. And anyway, that's the signature tune of Mr. Whippy.
Anytime I was doing, or they were doing a close-up of me, this truck would go by and make, I forgot what noise it was, some ridiculous noise.
I really need to know where you invested my money. The $16,000 that I'd saved. I mean, the attorneys. I'm sorry.
What the fuck was that?
The truck seemed to follow Trini everywhere she went.
No!
I'm sorry.
That fucking truck follows me. That was my curse on the Frighteners.
Right from the very beginning, I set out to make The Frighteners as a PG-13. I mean, I've shot R-rated films in the past, and so I felt I had a reasonably good idea of how to shoot a PG-13. I was deliberately avoiding any explicit gore, any explicit violence, but at the same time, I wanted the film to be as intense as it could be with those restrictions, and so we did things that were non-explicit to try and crank up the tension and try and, create scares, I guess, to make it frightening. When we screened it for the MPAA, we begun this very long and drawn-out process of trying to get a PG-13, because at first viewing they said there's no way, this is an R-rated film. The most ludicrous thing is we had to cut out the shotgun blasts in the door. They said there's too many shotgun blasts in the door, this is R-rated. And it's the first time in my life I'd ever known that blowing holes in a door was an R-rated activity. In fact, we should stop showing these shots, because this Laserdisc will be NC-17 if we carry on. It's I know Bob went crazy, and it was just so obvious to us that there was no way that we were going to get a PG-13 version of The Frighteners. Certainly not a film that we were going to be proud of.
The rating system is very arbitrary in America. It seems to be applied with double, triple standards all the time. I was shocked that the movie, well, let me put it this way. I knew that they were making a PG-13 film, but I also knew enough from having worked on as many films as I have that they were going to have a problem because there's these elements. Now, they ended up getting an R rating, and I know Peter was very frustrated by that because, as he said, if I was going to make an R-rated film, I would have made an R-rated film.
It would definitely have been more interesting to make an R-rated version of The Frighteners from the beginning. Of course, at this point, we had no time to change anything. The only thing that we did do, after we learnt that we now had an R-rated release rather than a PG-13 release, is we redid the shot of Dammers getting killed. Originally, he was just going to be shot by a shotgun, and we weren't going to see anything other than just him being blasted back through the doors. And now we had an R-rated film, I thought, well, you know, damn it, let's just do something a little bit more interesting for Dammer's death. And we had a few weeks left before we had to deliver our last effects shot, so we engineered a shot which was never part of the original planning, where Dammer's head gets blown apart by the shotgun blast. And that is definitely a result of us suddenly getting an R rating and being able to do that.
My 11-year-old daughter went with me to the opening of The Frighteners, and she said, "Oh, it's R-rated. Is there some? If there's a section, you know, I really shouldn't see, you know, tell me." And I said, "Well, if there is, I don't know which one it is. I mean, there's a couple things which are kind of get a little violent and stuff, but I don't think it's anything that's going to disturb you." And she asked me at the end of the movie, "What was it in there they didn't want me to see?" Nothing disturbed me. She liked the movie a lot, and I said, "Molly, I can never begin to try to second guess what adults think that young adults get harmed by. Because the problem is most adults forgot what it's like to be a child or a young adult. They've developed some concept of what it's like over the years that has nothing to do with what young people are really like. So, in fact, in my mind, in my daughter's mind, there was nothing in there that was like over the top that was going to harm her, but that's not the way the rating boards looked at it. So it's kind of a shame because it did kind of cut out a chunk of audience that I think really would have liked the film. I would have really loved that film when I was 13 years old. I mean, that was like just a perfect 13-year-old Danny Elfman movie. And I'm glad that I grew up in an era where we didn't have ratings, because I wouldn't have been able to see half the stuff that I loved.
Hollywood didn't they didn't understand the film because it starts out like this kind of wacky comedy, and then it goes and the storyline turns to this very dark and twisted kind of thriller. And what a lot of people don't understand is those are Peter's two favorite genres.
The issue of the tone of the film also upset a few people when they saw the movie. I mean, I read reviews where the reviewer would say, you know, this film doesn't know whether it's a comedy or a horror film, and it sort of changes halfway through. That seemed to annoy quite a few people, the way that they said that the film suddenly changed its tone. I never really thought of it quite like that. The Frighteners, to me, is similar to Heavenly Creatures in the structure of its tone. In both Heavenly Creatures and The Frighteners, we get to meet our characters with some humorous scenes. We have, you know, comedy, basically. We have, you know, stuff where they're having some fun and we learn who they are. We get all that information early, and then gradually the screws start to tighten in the story. I don't think it's sudden, I just think it's gradual. Over a period of time, the stakes go up. This becomes a situation of life and death. Frank Bannister has to stop the Reaper killing people. You know, people are dying. The town is getting panicky, he gets arrested, Dammers turns up, and the mood is slowly becoming one which is much less jokey. But I think that's an honest transition, because there's nothing in the movie at that point to laugh at, that the stakes within the film itself are actually going up.
He has a great ability to combine a thriller movie with comedic action, and that's what The Frighteners was, and that was one of the reasons that I loved it. And I didn't understand why people were confused looking at it, because that's a real narrow mind when you look at a film and you say, oh, well, it wasn't comedy from start to finish, or oh, well, it wasn't thriller from start to finish. It actually, you know, gave me more of an experience to watch it, so therefore I don't like it. That's strange to me. I don't understand that way of thinking. I loved I love The Frighteners, and I love the fact that we were able to have fun and do silly, wacky, funny stuff, but at the same time have this backdrop of complete manic insanity.
I'm very proud of this movie, and I think it's brilliant. And I just think it was a pyramid of misfortunes and bad timing, and which will all be resolved, I believe, when it comes out on video, because I think people will then discover this movie for what it is. You know, this movie is very wet and atmospheric, and it has just a kind of a feel about it that's autumnal.
One of the really great memories of The Frighteners for me is, you know, working with Bob Zemeckis and Steve Starkey, who were both incredibly supportive of what Fran and I were doing. They were very respectful, I guess you'd say, of us wanting to make our film. I guess Bob, being a director himself, was, you know, particularly conscious of his role in the film, I guess, as executive producer, and he was almost painfully, you know, aware of not wanting to step on my toes at times. But he was also an amazingly knowledgeable resource when we were cutting the movie, and Bob sat in with us to look at the cut, you know, and I paused for a moment. I thought, wow, you know, here's Bob Zemeckis actually giving me ideas for my movie, and it was really that sort of input was just so helpful. And those guys, you know, worked very, very hard and were very supportive of us right the way through to the end. And you know, I'll always be incredibly grateful and have wonderful memories of that collaboration. At the end of the day, the one critic that I want to please is myself. I want to always make a film that if I was going to watch it tomorrow, it was somebody else's movie, I was paying my money, I was going to sit down and see this film called The Frighteners. You know, I know that I would really enjoy it. I mean, that's the film I've made, something that I would really enjoy if I went to see it. And with that in mind, you know, the box office doesn't really mean that much to me. It's lovely to have people say that they enjoyed it, but at the end of the day, the biggest tragedy would be for me to make a film that I didn't feel personally proud of. That would be where I think, you know, I've really gone wrong. And The Frighteners, is, you know, I'd love The Frighteners if I saw it. I would really, really enjoy it if it was somebody else's film. And so for me, you know, it's a film I'm proud of, and that's the most important thing.